Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show where we take a peek into the hearts and lives of our favorite artists. From running a creative business and practice to mindset, we talk about everything that goes behind into making a life and a career that you adore as an artist. Think of this as your happy hour with your favorite artist in your studio. Hear them share the messy and the wonderful side of creating and living a creative, heartfelt life within and outside our studios. As you tune in, be ready to be inspired and encouraged. I'm your host, Charuka Arora, an artist, designer, entrepreneur, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. I'm your host, Charuka Arora. Today, I have another very special guest, and this guest isn't an artist. And today, she is here to share some more insights with us about the business of art and the other side of what the art world is. We have with us today Gita Joshi. Welcome to the podcast, Gita.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Gita is the founder of Curator Salon, Art Scene Magazine. She's also an artist coach and a great entrepreneur. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to Gita even before this. And I've been following her work for quite a while. And I'm so excited to have you here today, Gita.
I'm really excited to talk to you. So, I want to say thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much. Okay, so before we begin into the episode, let's just start from the start. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, so that they can know you better?
Sure. So, my name's Gita Joshi. I'm an independent curator. I'm based in London. And I also work as an artist coach and mentor. I have the Curator Salon podcast, which has been going about 2.5 years. And this year I also published Art Scene Magazine. So it's a new publication, which for me is a new way of showing artists, outside the gallery context. So, yeah, that is what I'm doing these days. And I used to run a gallery in central London called Also Major.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay, I have so many more questions, but before I get into it, let's get to know about a little bit about your early years. Where were you born? How were you as a child? Were you someone who was like always interested in the arts?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think when I was a child, I don't remember spending that much time drawing. I kind of, remember playing and things like that. And my interaction with art was very much around, school trips to the museum. So it was that. I didn't actually do art, at school or anything like that. And, I'm not an artist, but I don't class myself as an artist. So it was when I did art history at sixth form that is when I realized actually I found a subject that I was really interested in, because I'd always been interested in history and I did do that, through school and GCSE. But it was then suddenly bringing art into it and seeing, learning art history, looking at history through the lens of art. All of that suddenly felt like a really natural fit for, the things I was interested in. And there's probably a visual side of that as well, which was, much more interesting to me than perhaps straightforward, history. And of course, when I was at school, it was all very European history as well. So I think that is when I felt quite aligned to, a subject that I felt very called to. So there was that, but, then I continued to university, and that was also where I did history of art. Well, I actually did history of design, though I did focus mostly on fine art. And I think it was those years were sort of on reflection, quite pivotal, because I'd always been led to believe that if you wanted to work in the arts, then you had to work for a museum. I didn't know anybody that, I knew a handful of artists, but I didn't know anybody that was, I don't know, running a gallery or doing anything curatorial, or even, I don't know, like working as part of a festival or some kind of annual event, right? I mean, there's all these other things that happen. It was very much like, oh, you do art history and then you can work in a museum.
Yeah.
And of course, that is a massively closed world when it comes to employment here.
Yeah.
And it's probably like that around the world. I mean, quite famously, most museums, only hire people from about 3 universities. So, it's quite a closed world anyway. That, and, I'd never really experienced auction houses or any of those other peripheral industries to even really know what that would be to, want to apply for, I don't know, a graduate job or something like that. So I ended up working for a Royal Commission, Royal Fine Art Commission, which was amazing. It's an architectural consultancy, which is it doesn't exist anymore. It was taken over by an organisation called CABE, and and that kind of was quite interesting to me. And it was great to have as a first job because it was, we're just exposed to like so many, I don't know, well-known people and places, and we used to get like free passes to the Royal Academy and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. And then after that, I ended up kind of sticking with architecture a bit longer, and went to work for. I think I moved from there to Terry Farrell, which is an international architectural agent company, and then worked for, I don't know, I can't even remember, a couple of other architectural consultancies like the Civic Trust and things like that. So I've now kind of found myself stuck in this slightly, what would you call it, like administrative role, right? But within like this creative sector, but it was architecture and it wasn't art.
So would you guys like to get to meet artists, or uh, what was that work about, and did you like it? How long did you even do that?
That was, I don't know, most of the 90s. Yeah, it was, I did like it, but it was, to be fair, it was all I knew as well, because I hadn't really been exposed to anything else. And there was this, there's this idea, certainly back in the 90s, and I don't know if it still exists, but once you kind of start going down one career path, that's where you're headed, right? The idea of
Yeah,
breaking free and doing
yeah,
something
yeah,
else
yeah.
set up the idea that you had to now go and retrain somewhere, or maybe you had to go and do a master's. And these were things that I was not especially interested in, because it was just about fitting into a job. The idea of being a business owner or entrepreneur was just like not really as commonplace back then as it is now. So after that, to be honest, I ended up actually moving into investment banking and worked for various investment banks. And it was
Wow.
actually during that period that I kind of missed art more, but I had the resources to keep one foot in the art through by way of evening classes and going to talks and trips and things like that. So anything, a lot of my leisure trips and leisure time would be something around art. It'd be whatever, like a talk at the V&A Museum, or like a weekend course, or something at some other similar kind of museum or gallery and things. So I've sort of volunteered at things like London Open House, but this was the only way that I could see I could be any kind of participant, because I didn't really even know what I would be able to do. And what I knew I didn't want to do was just go and be, continue an administrative job in an environment like that could be more exciting, but where I had no creative input or creative control. So yeah, that was kind of how that all played out until I trained at Central St Martin's in curating.
When was that?
That was really for me quite a pivotal moment, because suddenly that was where I realized that I could bring together both art and business, and it would, and I would have that creative control, and I would, okay, be a curator. And that is where I would be able to work with contemporary artists, and it let go of that idea of the museum and dead artists and all of that as well, right? Um, so it was very current, it was contemporary, it was more collaborative, it was bringing together art and business. And of course, as many curatorial programs will teach, is around grants and funding and all that sort of thing. But I knew I didn't really want to be in that space. I didn't want to work for the public sector. I think I just have a different level of momentum, and that's why I need to be in the commercial space, that I can like have an idea and pull it together and make it happen, and speed and all of that was quite important to what I was starting to learn about myself and sort of my, I don't know, energy around certain things.
Wow. So, okay, you mentioned that while you were young, you would go to museums and galleries. That's something I really want to talk about, and I do ask a lot of my guests, because like it's not, maybe it's not so much common here in India. But did your family have a lot of creative inputs? Uh, how did your interest in the arts build up? Were you too much like were you introduced to your into the arts and to the arts by someone in your family? How did that go into? Because not everyone takes their children to art museums and galleries so often.
No, and as I said, like for me as a child, that was very much a school trip that we would go on, so it wasn't, the sort of thing we did as a family or anything like that. I think there was definitely creativity in the home. My mum was always and still is, very interested in things to do with textiles and sewing and designing and embroidery and all of that sort of side of, what we do class these sort of women's.
Sure, because she also comes from India, I believe.
That's right. Yeah. And then, she also lived in Africa. So, she was exposed to quite a lot of different types of, textiles and fashion and things like that. So, I would say, yeah, she's definitely, has a creative side. And my dad had also worked as a photographer. So they had that, but that wasn't like the dominant vibe in the household. We weren't all like creative, and we didn't really go out to do creative things. It was just everybody's personal expression.
Yeah, but it was passively there.
For sure, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so when you went to Central St. Martin's and you decided to uh, pursue curation, um, I mean, Central St. Martin's is quite a prestigious name, a well-renowned university. And how was it when you graduated from there? How did you actually navigate yourself into the real world, in the real world, and working into the art world? And how was your early experience?
Well, obviously, I was of a certain age, so I had life experience, and
When did you
you
actually
know,
go to Central Martins?
I think it was like either 2010 or 2011 that I was at St Martin's. I can't remember exactly, but around that time. But I also knew, there was this whole other vibe coming through, right? If you think the recession here was still hanging on from, the crash in what, 2008 or something like that, there was a lot of talk and investment in startups and entrepreneurship and enterprise, and all of this was now bubbling. Or maybe it was always there and it was suddenly now on my radar. So I think, because I'm very sure all of that sort of thing wasn't around, you know, in the 90s. That was when it wasn't called entrepreneurship, it was called business studies, you know. um, but these things were suddenly, more accessible, they were more bite-sized, and I knew people that had their own businesses or they were thinking of starting them. So I was kind of riding that wave alongside my, like how I want, what I wanted to do some with the curating, to be honest, and figuring that out. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't know what it was really going to be, but I just knew that it had to be in the commercial space, and there were ways around this, and there was all this new information out there to learn. So that is kind of, that is really what I started doing in parallel, was joining more business networks and getting more ideas about how I could be a curator in a more commercial sense. Who would hire me? Would it be a company? Would I be a freelancer? Was I renting art or was I selling art? Figuring out some of these sorts of things.
Okay, I have really I don't know even if it's a right question or not, but I really want to ask this because I'm curious. Because as an artist, as an artist, when you come out of art school or whatever, um, when people think that how can they be more um, successful commercially, or how they can do more commercially, there's a lot of stigma around that. Because the stigma that comes are you compromising your creativity or your work, or thinking about being commercially successful, or all of those things? Has is there any sort of those things when it comes to curation? Because working in the commercial sector versus, let's say, museums, or these private sectors or these government sectors, where the whole high profile and all of those things, How is that? I'm really interested to know how is that for someone who's like a curator.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is, it is quite, there's a judgment around it. I think when it's artists and they're talking about being a commercial artist or some, if you're being asked, are you too commercial? That, I mean, that whole question is like loaded with judgment, isn't it? And there's a sort of implication that you're, I don't know, not good enough if you haven't been picked up by a museum or something. And you and I know that our self-worth is something that we get to validate for ourselves first. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely hierarchies, and again, this is judgment, and it is all of that exists on the curating side as well. Um, like the museum sector is very academic. And that's what there needs to be a metric of measure to get into these handful of jobs. And that what they do is essentially set the bar all on how many qualifications you've got. And so a lot of that is based on like, well, how much you could afford to, how many degrees you could afford
Yeah,
to get, and things like that, right? So there's that side of it. The commercial side, um I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I'm trying to like look around less, but I think there were definitely aspects of it that were intimidating in the beginning because again, it is an industry that is filled with a lot of people that have a lot of generational wealth. And it is a really difficult thing to like fundraise
yeah,
for
absolutely.
example, if you didn't have that, safety net of, a trust fund or something. So, I mean, it definitely is there. And then, those other sort of highly desirable curatorial jobs, like maybe working with corporations, and being like the house curator for whatever, an institute, like a commercial company, whether it's a bank
Yeah,
or anything, anything like that. Those again are very much based around education, even though the skill set is super administrative. And that was the one time I did go it was a complete
yeah,
ball ache of a part time. I don't know even what you would call that, what those jobs are called now. I can't remember the word, but it's more like a collections manager that the institution already has a collection of art, and we're just going to basically look after it, and then we know which one's gone in this office and that office, and and so on, or which meeting room these artworks are in. So it's very administrative in its execution, but they still set these really ridiculous barriers to entry in terms of academic expectation, even though the collection was heavily like travel posters from the 60s. So it's yeah. So I mean, there's definitely a hierarchy around it, and I think that is one of the things I'm happy to not be around, and that's why I get to you know put together exhibitions as I want in a way that suits me.
yeah. Perfect. That sounds fantastic. Okay, let's come to that. Now that you figure that you did not want, I think the bigger question of our lives is not where we want to be, it's where we don't want to be. The more we get to know where we don't want to be, the better we start guessing and understanding where we actually could be and where we actually want to be. So when you figure that, okay, this isn't the kind of space that you wanted to work, how you wanted to work in more of a creative capacity than just administrative capacity. Of course, we know where you are today, but what was that? I think the most important thing is that first step that we often take. What was your first step? Like, what was that first pivotal moment that you took towards entrepreneurship that you are doing today? Like, you're doing multiple things, and we'll definitely talk about all of those. But what was your first pivotal thing that you got into? How did that come to life?
Yeah, so I wanted to show art, and I was ready to I was ready to sell art. So the first thing I did was, well, actually, I was at the School for Creative. I can't even remember what it was called. School for Creative Startups. I can't remember when that was. Maybe 2012. And that was good because I was around other creative entrepreneurs. So people that were still, setting up and starting up a business. There were some people that had one for a while, and we're looking to kind of grow and expand and things like that. So that was great. So that was network. Certainly, changing the people you're around. So the people that have also driven to, pursue their own creative paths. So that was the first thing, changing up who I was around. And then the next thing I would say that was quite pivotal was um, signing up to do an art fair. So I did an art fair up in Manchester.
Oh, wow.
And so that was really, yeah, so that was really kind of putting money down and the investment and the time and putting into action, particularly around marketing, a lot of what I had been learning. And so it was now time to implement. It wasn't now time to implement. I had been implementing it, but now it was time to step up and show up and follow through. So yeah, so I did this art fair up in Manchester, which was really fun. Really loved it. It was, and of course, in terms of preparing for that, it was all the logistics and getting the artwork and getting the artwork up there and hanging and being there every day and all those sorts of things. And I think that was also where I realized how much I actually love talking to people about art, because that was really the first, well, actually, maybe it was the second, like real public interface of like, this is what I hear, this is what this booth is, what I'm representing, and you need to pay attention because, that was really the selling side of it and showing up for it and so on. So that was, yeah, I think that was a big thing where I really realized how much I loved that side of it and how I wanted to do that more and every day. So at this point, I'd also had friends that were art dealers and gallerists. So that was also shaping how I was viewing the world. And, a friend of mine had a gallery in East London. And I was like, oh man, this is what I want. This. And so, yeah, it was so good, when it just feels so right. And of course, when things feel right and you trust and you don't doubt and you really believe that this is like your calling, then things happen super fast. So I got back from Manchester in, I don't know when it was, September or October. And by the end of November, I had moved into premises in central London with my gallery space. So I got back to London and like literally like went around my network, started telling people I'm looking
Wow.
for a space. And so, yeah, exactly. But like I said, I mean, that was about alignment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Then what happened?
So, yeah, so then we opened the gallery. And actually, just to be clear, it was actually only a 6-month pop up. Pop ups were a thing back then. I don't know how much they are a thing now. They might be again. Now we've had so many.
No, I've seen a lot of those happening even now, and which I feel is a great idea. So, because you don't have to commit to a space for a longer term, you can still show physically and you can keep moving.
Exactly. So my original lease was a 6-month pop up, and then we ended up extending and extending, and then so that was in 2013, and we left in 2016.
That was quite a
So
long pop up.
yeah, exactly. So we kept renewing, and yeah, but it was great. So there was that, and then alongside that, I was also I joined the board of Camberwell Arts, which is the UK's oldest visual arts festival here. So I was working with them, and yeah,
Wow. Okay. So, from running a physical pop up gallery to now running an entire ecosystem of different art programs and podcast and coaching and art curation and exhibits. How has that shift happened for you, and how do you feel about that shift?
I think when you list it, it sounds like so many different things, but for me, it just sounds like one
Yeah, I
thing.
get that.
So interesting to hear it back. Yeah, well, when I was with Camberwell Arts, one of the things I did there was we're basically working heavily on the marketing side of like, both the event and then the arts market and then the open studios. And so all of that was, when I was like doing the open studios program, for example, I had a lot of visits to, with artists at their studios. And it was out of that the podcast was born. So I was, for me, it was like these conversations need to be brought to a wider audience. That was that was really the simple version of what I was trying to do with that. Um, so that is really how that podcast started. Um, Alongside that, and this had happened when I had still had the gallery, and I think I mentioned to you before, it was like we used to get some really bad submissions, and I used to sort of like, yeah, and it happens, and I would feel bad for the artist because, of course, I had to send a rejection email because they weren't right for me, but I felt like, at least they're trying, but there's a knowledge gap here. They just need a hand with like what makes a better submission or how to research a more appropriate gallery. So I used to run these workshops, and I think they were called Getting Gallery Ready. So that was like now moving slightly into this artist education space unintentionally, more from an aspect of like, let me just sort of help you out here a bit.
Solve the problem for yourself.
Yeah, and then that sort of was also then bled into the work I was doing with Camberwell Arts. So, those artists that were taking part in open studios or, I don't know, the arts market and things like that also seem to need that bit of, input and guidance and so on. So this has been going on longer than people might know me under the curator's salon. But um, sorry, I can't actually remember your original question. So how do I bring it all together? So that is where the arts education, artist support side of it comes from. Then, like with the podcast and doing the open studios and things. Obviously, I was promoting a lot of artists, through my own platform. So that is still an ongoing thing. So we're doing that. Obviously, now we do it differently. We have the magazine through the Instagram, and now I have virtual exhibitions as well. Um, so
Yeah. You've written a book as well.
then, yes, there's that as well happen. Oh my God, I've forgotten about that. Yeah, so those like a couple of years prior to publishing Show Your Art, the book, I was, really putting it down a lot of that information. It was, a work in progress for about 18 months, though the idea had been on and off for a number of years. Then, what was that be, 2019, I was really like, I'm going to get this book written by the end of the year. And then, December came and January came and I still hadn't written it. So that's when I actually committed to, hiring a publishing coach and, getting that book written and things. So I had a lot of it in draft. So now it was like fine tuning it and then.
It's a fantastic book. I would absolutely recommend to everyone, like to every creative entrepreneur, creative entrepreneur, to definitely go read it. I think that's how I found you in the first place. I think I saw the book and then I stalked you and then I found the curator salon and then everything else for. So, yeah, I love that book.
Thank you.
Perfect. How has this shift been for you? You've experienced a bit of both. Like, you've had a physical gallery space and the whole traditional gallery system versus now you're doing this new age business, like the new age art business where you have a own publication, you're also coaching artists and you are doing a podcast, like several things in one place with one aim. Uh, how has this evolution been for you? And what are your learnings and what are you more inclined towards? Do you feel more comfortable in this online space now, or you feel more inclined towards the offline space?
I absolutely love the online space, though I have to say it was a transition. After I left the gallery space, there was a bit of oh my God, what am I going to do? And I kind of never fully embraced the online gallery. I tried to stop and start with it. I did actually do a couple of other pop-ups, like more weekend kind of um, shop rentals and things like that. And that was fine. But keeping the momentum of an online gallery in between was something my heart wasn't fully in. I really wanted to, I tried and I felt like I needed some continuity, but I know, and I only know this now on reflection, right? I think at the time it was just like, oh, everything's a struggle. But the reality was, I just wasn't into it that much. So I did love the physical space. I did like those pop-ups that we did subsequently as well, because we did, as I say, sort of take on like rentals for a week or two, weekends and things like that as well afterwards. But it was really moving into the work that I'm doing now, and
Yeah.
since putting that book out, all of that work just feels so much better to me. So I really, yeah, do enjoy the online space. I really enjoy being able to connect with, people like yourself and, other people that we both have in common around the world, right? I mean, we wouldn't have met otherwise. Um,
I so agree with that.
so that for me is really fulfilling, and I think it allows me to gives me a lot more time as well to be able to have a practice that is creative and a practice that is of service to other people in different ways. So yeah, I would say that the online space is a really good fit for me, at least where I am now.
Love that answer, because I think most of us have had this transition and have been in double binds. But once you find your people, once you find people uh, of your own similar wavelength and your mindset, it's like, wow, like I was like, why have I not done this before? Why did I wait for this long? I would have made so many more friends, saved much more time. But yeah, love that. Okay, another question. In this process of coming from a traditional, as you've evolved from traditional to this new age business, how has your experience of working with artists evolved? And what do you look out for artists now that you're doing all of these several things?
So one of the things I love about the way we work now, being online, being able to connect with people around the world is just that diversity, right? I get to see so many different types of art, meet artists with so many different levels of experience, but all committed to the thing that they're doing. So that is really nice, and I get to do that, through particularly through things like the online exhibitions, and then the magazine as well. Through
Yeah, yeah.
For the coaching, at the moment just this week actually we started my a 12-week program for artists, and that's a group program. And so this is a new model that I'm trying. So again, it's still being kind of creative and flexible with how I deliver the coaching services. I've done like short 1 month programs before, and I've done longer, one to one. So what I like about the online coaching space is that it's literally people that are putting their hand up and saying, "Look, I need your help," and then we're able to kind of move forward together. Whereas, and it also lets me again connect with artists who are, need that support in all sorts of different locations. So, on the program I'm running right now, we've got somebody in the US, we've got somebody in Asia, and we've got people in Europe, and they can all be on the same program. So it's great for that interaction and bringing people together, where they can also learn from each other's experiences, and we can see what support they need and what resources are not available in their home location.
Absolutely. And I think I've been part of several programs, and I seriously feel it's such a big blessing, because um, just merely being a part of one ecosystem does not mean that you have to, like, let's say I don't primarily relate to the kind of ecosystem I live in, but I relate to more with, let's say, a lot of my own community that's been built online. A lot of us are from different parts of the world, US, UK, Europe, like, so many different places, and we all come from a similar mindset. And it's okay. I mean, if we did not have this platform, I would still be crying in one corner, and I would be self-sabotaging, or like, second guessing everything, because I would always feel something's wrong with me. And the entire fact that nothing's wrong with me, the entire fact is that I'm just different, and I want to do things differently, and I want to take charge, and I'm willing to come forward, and I'm willing to take all those risks just because I love what I do. And I think that's the biggest blessing for all of us. Otherwise we wouldn't even be here.
I think that's you said something really important in there, that it is about finding the people that are on your wavelength and of the same mindset, and that can be from other parts of the world, because we are really conditioned into, oh, this is how it is in this country or whatever. But actually, I mean, I know for yourself, right? You're based in India, but you have a large client based in the US, right? So it's important for you to know how the market is there and how the opportunities available, for example. So I think that is almost more important than, the location of people, and that's, just another benefit here of our online communities.
Yes, so we're both encouraging everyone to. to pursue their dreams and just go for it and just come to the online world and find your spot. Okay, perfect. So now that we're talking about finding your spot for artists and entrepreneurs and everything, what are your suggestions and your learnings and your tips that you would like to say or give out as per your from your own experience in finding and building their own community, showing their and selling their work online more? And basically alternating, building an alternative system for themselves and just not depending on the old traditional, let's say the gallery or any other way.
Yeah, so of course, as you know, the subtitle for my book is How to Build a Career Without an Art Gallery, which, is a very good SEO friendly subtitle. But the point is not that you don't ever need one. The point is like this is what you need to do before you're in a good position to actually work with a gallery. If you get this foundation in place, then you're in a much stronger position for a gallery to say yes to your submission or open the conversation at least. So, I mean, I would say, get some basic business training, be your own best advocate, understand how marketing works, and and recognize that, you as an artist, it's people want to buy from the artist because it's the allure of the artist, that proximity and the intimacy they get of saying, I bought it directly from the artist. This is hugely desirable, right? So don't try and think that if you had a gallery you would make more. No, the reason you're not maybe selling right now is because you're not showing up for yourself, because that is a massive thing that this is the reason that galleries will when they're selling at art fairs or even in their own premises, they'll say one of the things they'll say is the artist is going to be in the gallery on Saturday, or the artist is going to be on the booth at the fair this weekend, come and meet them. Right, again, they know it's the allure of the artist. If that is you, show up for yourself first.
Yeah, I love that advice actually, and I'm going to keep that for myself as well because sometimes in the whole fluff and like all of these things, sometimes we just forget that it's us from like it. Everything starts from us and ends with us. Like we need to know why we're doing this, and we need to know that we can trust in ourselves. And if we don't keep the faith, no one else will.
Yeah, it's all of it together, isn't it? I mean, it feels like a heavy burden to bear that you have to make the work and market it and sell it, but only until such time as you can hire in, I don't know, studio support, studio manager, studio assistant, maybe hire somebody to do social media. But before you do that, you want to know what sort of messages land with your audience, or what the tone is of your brand. And again, whenever I talk about branding, artists get very triggered because they feel very pigeonholed into one thing. But an artist's brand is very much not just the visuals, but it is the conversations they have online, the tone, and
The value system they build, the voice they want to build, the message they want to stand for. Yeah, I so agree with that.
all of it together. Yeah, and it's it's very intangible, but it's all of those things together.
So before we get into the rapid fire, I just have one more last question. It's a very simple one, but it's something that I love to ask all my guests. What really puts you out of bed? So what you're doing, all of that you're doing now, if there was no fluff around it, why would you still get up in the morning and do it? What is that one reason that you do what you do?
I don't know the answer to this. I think I just can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah,
Um,
that is an answer to it.
yeah, and I think that is where I feel really lucky that I get to do this. And if it all fell apart tomorrow, I would build it all up again the day after. So it's that's all there is to it. And I think we have a beautiful network that we're always going to figure it out.
Perfect. Okay. Now comes the favorite part of the interview. I have a small rapid fire for you. It's a set of questions all targeted towards getting to know you better. I'll ask you questions quickly. I want you to answer them quickly. Just just give me one answer. Anything that comes to your mind. There's no right or wrong. The whole idea is to know you. Okay, here we go. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
I think diversity.
What's the one word that describes you the best?
I know words people have used. I don't know what I would say. I would say dynamic.
If you could have a physical gallery anywhere in the world, where would you have it?
Ooh, maybe Miami. I think the beach is quite attractive. Yeah.
Your biggest source of inspiration?
Instagram, to be honest. It's got everything, right? It's got art, it's got the memes, it's got the quotes, it's got the
That's
spiritual
true. That's really
uplifting. It's
true.
all there, man. It's all there.
Who is your favorite women artist?
I think Njideka Crosby. I think I said her name right. I don't know how you say it.
Okay, I'm going to take her link from you and I'm going to link her in the show notes because I don't want to pronounce her name wrong. So we'll link her in the show notes. Perfect. Who's your go to person when you're in need of advice or you're in trouble?
Maybe Michelle Gomez. You know
Oh,
Michelle?
wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Um, yeah, probably her at the moment. No, like let's see on speed dial. I've got various people on speed dial.
Shout out to Michelle.
It's fine.
Shout out to Michelle for being like a go to person for so many.
Oh, is she? Did somebody else mention?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people who've been really counting on Michelle, which is wonderful. If you were to meet younger Geeta today, what advice would you give her?
Do what you want because nothing else matters.
Love that. Okay, shout out to an artist who's currently on your heart list slash you're loving.
There's so many, but I'm going to mention a couple of people we both know, like Kat Popova, uh, Betsy Enzenberger, Maria Moma.
Yes, love her.
I love the artist who is on the front of Art Scene magazine as well, Richard
Oh,
Spencer.
oh yeah.
Um,
Congratulations on that.
Matt Bollinger is another one whose work I'm loving. And I think Lauren Phillips as well.
Perfect. I'm going to link all of these artists in the show notes so that our listeners can check them out. And okay, also a shout out for Betsy. I'm going to have her on the podcast soon, so that's exciting. Yes. Okay, my last question to you: as a curator, what's that one advice that you would like to give artists?
That they can also curate their own shows and they don't need to put all that responsibility onto somebody else.
Oh my God, that's such an important one. Actually, such important one. Perfect. Thank you so much, Geeta. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being so wonderful and being so honest. I really had a great time, and I hope so did you. But before I let you go, I just want to ask you one more question, which is, do you have something coming up that you would like to share with us? And where can people find you, follow you, and how can they reach out to you?
So I can be found on Instagram at the Gita Joshi. My website is called thecuratorssalon.com. And what have I got coming up? I've got an exhibition that they can visit online called Intrinsic Nature, opening on the 21st of June. I've got an exhibition I'll be opening a call out for soon, which will take place in August, and that is for artists over 40. So any age over 40, not in their 40s, in their 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s, it's fine. But I think this is a group of artists who very much often feel overlooked, with so much emphasis on youth. So this exhibition that I'll be doing a call out for later in June is really for artists, over 40 to participate in. It's an open call exhibition, and that will take place in August. And then those are my main things. I've got some self-study programs around mindset for artist success, hopefully launching in August. And then if anybody's interested in contributing to the next magazine, want to be featured, then we'll be doing a call out for that in August for the publication that will be available to buy in November.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing all of these things. And I'm going to make sure that we link all of these projects on the show notes. Sorry. And I'll make sure that we share all of these projects on the show notes so that if you're listening, I would highly recommend that you go check out all the work that Geeta does and some of her amazing coaching programs and just reach out to her if you like.
Thank you so much, Charuka. It's been an absolute pleasure being talking to you today.
Thank you so much. The honor is mine. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you soon again.
Definitely. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love, and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.